I've seen Kevin McCarthy pull someone aside before for a talking to. And that representative that I last saw him do that to was Representative Ted Yoho of Florida. And what Kevin McCarthy did was that he pulled him aside to essentially excuse his behavior, to allow it and to abet it. When I hear that Representative McCarthy is going to pull a member aside who has made white supremacist sympathizing comments, the thing that I think is, what is he going to tell them? Keep it up?
Okay, joining me now is former Florida Congressman Ted Yoho. Congressman, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. It's great to see you. You know, in her conversation over there on MSNBS, AOC said you supported racist comments. Do you know what she's talking about?
No, I don't, Chris, and thanks for having me on. And, you know, my former colleague from New York, you know, kind of lives in a different universe. And I would encourage you to get out and visit the country, visit this great nation of ours and see what it is. You know, my interaction with her, the last one I had, and she's saying Kevin McCarthy would not hold us accountable. There's nothing to be held accountable. She made a false claim about a conversation I had and changed the narrative, Chris. That narrative she took from her policies advocating for getting rid of the police force 100%. You know, the world was going to end in 12 years. We've got to get rid of the cattle. The Custom Border Patrol agents were making detainees drink out of the toilets, were all lies. Yet when I had my interaction with her, it was to question her policies, strictly her policies, advocating for shoplifting, that it was okay. And she changed that into a narrative of misogyny, racism, patriotism, afraid of offending women. And there's a word that this is the word of the day. It's called sophistry. And what sophistry is telling a lie so passionately to get people to believe in it. And I think she believes in that stuff. And, you know, you talk to people today, I have a lot of conservative Black friends, Hispanic friends, Asian friends, and you ask them about racism, and they said, are you kidding? It's nothing like it was, you know, Civil War, the 1960s, and we've become a better nation. But they want to take us back there so they can divide this nation.
No, I'm with you. Look, Congressman, here's what's really going on. The last time I experienced somebody the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the current Socialist Democrat Party, I was in the 5th grade. And this is what they do, folks. Let me give you an example of what they do. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hates cops, so she wants to get rid of cops all over the country. So because that would make poor neighborhoods full of Latinos and full of Black people less safe, I can call Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez a racist. See, that's how it works. You've got to turn yourself into pretzels. See, and we just went with our last guests here, Congressman. Basically, the left wants to call you names so they can justify doing all manner of illegal and improper things to you, whether it's Antifa on the streets or it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her squad in Congress. Am I fair in saying that?
You're absolutely right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. And my former colleague from New York, she's saying how the Kevin McCarthy and the Republican Party is controlled by QAnon. The truth of this is, when I had my interchange with Kevin McCarthy about the incident with my colleague from New York, he wanted me to apologize. And I says, Kevin, I cannot apologize for that which I did not say. And so we had a discussion. He says, Ted, if you don't do this, the squad, you know, my colleague from New York and her group, we're going to have me censured. And then once I'm censured, this is what happens. They can strike anything I've ever said in the congressional record, remove it forevermore, and then they will remove me from committees. And so I saw the writing on the wall, and this is the important part. I went up there and I made an apology to Congress for adding more strife to a contentious body already, and I could have been more professional and called my colleague from New York's office. But the interesting thing is Steny Hoyer was on the floor, the majority leader of the Democratic Party, 80 years old, and he accepted my apology, and he said it was earnest and it was sincere. But the next day, the squad got on to him that night, and they put so much pressure on him and Nancy Pelosi that he got up the next morning and he went onto the House floor and said, I watched that again, and that was not a sincere apology. This is the power this young group of people have, and they're controlling the Democratic Party. And America needs to wake up. And I can say 74 plus million have woken up. The silent majority says, we're not taking this false narrative that you're pushing out there. We do not accept it, and we will not accept this. And one last thing that you brought up, you were talking about what you saw growing up as a child. This utopia that my colleague from New York is painting of free health care, free Medicare, free education, a living wage, whether you work or not. That utopia they're promising people is in reality Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela. And that's 5 to 10 years away from here in America if the American people don't wake up.
I think the entirety of your former colleagues, the Democrat socialists, are in the back pocket of communist China. See, two can play this game. They are conspiring with an enemy that unleashed a plague onto our country, killing 450,000 Americans. So I can basically accuse Democrats of palling around with America's enemies, and then we can strike all of their words from the congressional record. But of course, your party doesn't seem to want to go down that road, and that's what I want to talk to you about. The final question. You know, you left Congress making a promise to self-impose term limits. Article 5 Convention of the States, there's a movement in our country to make that happen because there are a lot of leaders in Washington that don't have the good sense like you to say, hey, you know what, I did my bit for king and country. They just want to stay there forever and collect the taxpayer-funded paycheck. Would you support an Article 5 Convention of States initiative to put a constitutional amendment for term limits?
Yes, I would. And, you know, that was talked about when I ran, and there's a big movement. We have limited opportunities when you have all three branches in the hands of a party that's controlled by the likes of my former colleague from New York. And look at who's funding her. People from the Democratic Progressive Party are funding her. That party is a Marxist communist party. You can look up the history of that. That's where the funding and the ideology is coming, and that's the ideology they're leaning to.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.